Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. And right now, you can save £50 per person. That's £200 off for a family of 4. Book now with Jet2 Holidays.
Good morning, everyone. Today's Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, all. Good morning. I wasn't here yesterday having some technical issues. I did switch internet services. I don't know if that's what it was. It doesn't seem like that was the issue, but good morning either way. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Hope you guys are having a good week. I know it's pretty darn hot out there, even hotter in other areas. I know Florida is now they're under a heat warning that they could get up to right around that, I think Orlando, Tampa, Sarasota area, up to 118 heat index, which we saw here in the St. Louis area last year, up to 118. I know that because I was camping that weekend out at the, the Kid Rock concert in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And I almost died many times that weekend. The heat index reaching up to 117 and 118 degrees. Good morning, Dottie. Good morning, Beatrice. Good to see you guys. What a morning. As always so much to talk about. And it's like, where do we even start? Of course. Yesterday, again, I was having some internet issues. Hopefully it holds through today. I just started a new internet service, but I really don't think that's what the issue was. I think it was something to do with the streaming service because the past couple days I've had a tough time getting the show started, including today. So I think it's just something with the streaming service is the problem. And we'll hopefully get it worked out. Colonel Joe Adams will be joining us next Wednesday. He's also getting a new internet service installed, getting some technical issues worked out. So, we'll get it. We're getting there. Sometimes we all just have those days. I've been having technical issues all over the place. Yesterday I think I've talked before about having a 3D printer. I got this 3D printer. It's made by Anycubit, and it is called the Cobra 3 Max. It's the largest 3D printer, like home 3D printer. It's huge. However, it doesn't work. So I'm new to 3D printing, and I will tell you, if any of you have a 3D printer, have tried to 3D print, it is a nightmare sometimes. Your nozzle gets clogged, it doesn't stick to the plate, and you have to stop and start all over. And boy, I have really been dealing with some issues. Feeding the filament line into the little feed thing, it gets stuck, you have to untangle it. It starts printing and it's gloopy and you have to stop, and then it's clogged, and it's never ending. It is literally never ending. I've had this thing for about a month. I've bought a bazillion rows of filament so I could have every color and every type, and I can't print a darn thing. So, oh, it's frustrating, really frustrating, but hopefully we'll get that worked out. I'm hoping to get it worked out today because I want to print. I've got some Christian items I'm going to be printing. I'm going to print some patriotic items. So I'm really excited about that. I just have to get the thing going. So when I get it going and you see these items that I'm printing out, I will be sure to show them to you here. So we'll talk about that. Good morning, Linda. Hopefully you're having a good morning. Big topic today clearly is going to be the 8.8 magnitude earthquake in Russia that has caused tsunamis to take place all across the world. Some of these tsunamis have been quite damaging. And were they predicted? We'll talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about obviously the earthquake, the shooting in New York City, because we haven't talked about that yet. I wasn't here yesterday. And I still think that that's a big PSYOP operation. We'll talk about that, but it's awfully strange that this guy went up so casually, by the way, to go to the NFL office because he has CTE. And then the next thing you know, who does he kill? An executive from Blackstone, right? And then he somehow manages to use that very giant weapon that has a silencer on the end of it to shoot himself. So we'll be definitely getting into that, talking about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the video that I just played to you about ICE, that was officially released from the White House. Donald Trump has released a statement on many statements on Truth Social. If you're not over on Truth Social, boy, he's really killing it over there. He is going after Mike Pence, after Paul Ryan. And if you saw the video that I played, the intro and the I almost said outro, the intro and the out on the show on Monday, you would see that video that Donald Trump had posted on social media on Truth Social that showed if you go towards the end, those are all the folks that he's targeting. And Paul Ryan and Mike Pence were shown at the end of that video. And then first thing I see this morning when I get up is a lot of posts about Paul Ryan and Mike Pence and how they were part of the coup against Donald Trump, and they are on the hit list for Donald Trump to go back and to investigate and to potentially indict over treason. Now, Donald Trump posted another thing on True Social too about isn't it time to indict Obama? Now, we can indict Obama. Does that mean maybe we're going to get some testimony? We know, obviously, because of immunity, he's not going to be prosecuted. But we keep seeing Obama's name by Donald Trump drawn into the mix. And I don't really know where that's all going. Obviously, we would love for some testimony coming from Obama, maybe flip on some of his people, but that's not going to happen. I will truly say that Obama is untouchable. That man is untouchable. There is nothing anyone can do to get him to talk, to get him to turn anyone in, to get him to tell or admit that a coup took place. None of that is going to happen. There is no way any of that's going to happen. So, as far as I'm concerned, Obama is a non-player. He's just going to laugh it off because the man is absolutely 100% untouchable. Because whether we like it or not, the deep state still exists. The deep state still runs the show. They do. I don't think they don't. Yes, Donald Trump has done some fantastic things, continues to do some fantastic things, and we're going to see that improve as we move on. We're going to see a lot more taking place, a lot more children rescued, a lot more perpetrators, of course, arrested. As a matter of fact, Dan Bongino just mentioned the other day a new operation. I think he called it, was it Hot Summer operation, where they're targeting, of course, the country's most violent criminals, because which I love. I absolutely love that because we've been going after the most violent illegal criminals, right? People in our country illegally who've committed some serious crimes. But what about the people who live here, who are natural born United States citizens who commit violent crimes? How about we go after them? And that is something that Donald Trump has always done. He's always targeted the violent criminals here. And I've told the story before that in his last term, he had, I can't recall the name of the operation, but he had this operation. It was a multi, agency task force that he put together all across the country. And they were operating in St. Louis, which we know St. Louis is a hot spot, of course, for violent crime. And a press release had been sent out to all the local news agencies. And for whatever reason, the news agencies would not read the press release. They would not discuss what was going on with Donald Trump and his objective to take violent criminals off the streets of St. Louis. And a friend of mine who works very high up in law enforcement, not here locally, but regionally, sent the press release to me. He's like, well, and I can't recall what show I was on. I think The Edge at the time. And he's like, will you please read this? He's like, well, this press release has gone out to all the local news agencies in St. Louis, and not one of them will read this press release because it says Donald Trump initiated this task force against violent crimes in the city of St. Louis. They absolutely would not read it on the news because they don't want to give any credit to Donald Trump. And so, of course, we talked about it on the show, as of course we always told, as much truth as we could over there on the edge. And and it's no different now under Donald Trump's term. We're still trying to fight violent crime. And but where my point was going is that Donald Trump is looking for you. If you want to be an ICE agent, now is the time to apply. I think you have to be under the age of 36 to be a Border Patrol agent. I'm quite certain. But there are other roles available. There's administrative roles. You might be thinking, well, how can I help? I'm not going to go out, fly down to the border and arrest people coming across the border. I don't have the energy or health, to do something like that. You might be thinking, but there are plenty of opportunities. I've even heard that somewhere down the road, there could be some remote opportunities if you want to work for ICE. So that's something to think about. Massive effort underway to get ICE fully staffed, of course, with the focus being on ICE agents, people who want to go out into the streets, because we're ramping up efforts. Remember, heading into August, We've said this from day one. We're ramping up efforts into August because phase number one was to tackle the most violent criminals that have entered our country illegally. Phase number two, for those folks, we've been warning people self deport, right? Phase number two, which is supposed to begin in August. Now, whether that will happen, I don't know. But allegedly, phase number two is when we actually arrest and deport people who are here illegally but have not committed any crime other than living in our country illegally. So, a lot of people have mixed reactions on that. I know a lot of people in higher places have talked to Donald Trump about maybe creating some type of immunity or amnesty for some of these people that work at hotels or farms or certain types of manufacturing or food processing. And now Donald Trump has said that's not going to happen, but there's a lot of back and forth on that. So we'll see where that goes heading into August. Good morning, Peggy. I did not get your message about the regenerative farm. Please resend that to me. I apologize. I did not get that. Sherry, good morning, Sherry. Good morning, Donna. And good morning, Karen. Sherry says, August is coming soon. Does Missouri allow us to find the illegals for $1,000? Sherry, I know exactly where you're going. You know, I haven't heard anything more about that. But back in, I don't know if it was May, March, there was a lot of talk about how there would be a reward offered to you if you sent in a tip to the tip line. There was going to be a tip line established, and it was starting. It was, as a matter of fact, it was circulating. The tip line was circulating, and then they kind of backwalked on that, and they said, "Oh, no, 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 no. You know, this is not a tip line. We're not. This is not what we're doing." And then somebody said, "Well, that's not supposed to roll out until August. The tip line." Now, I don't know. I don't know if that was Democrats trying to stir up some trouble, for Donald Trump, and there really is no tip line. I've heard that there will be a tip line down the way. I know a lot of people are very much against that because they feel that it's like the Holocaust whenever people were asked to call in and tell on their neighbor. And of course, the Gestapo will come out and round Jews up and take them to the camp. So a lot of people are very much against that type of tip line. So we'll see how that heads. But I haven't heard anything more about the tip line as of yet. And Peggy, if you sent the message to my messenger, for whatever reason, I think because I send and receive so many of these videos, my Facebook is still extremely restricted. For a little while there, they gave me a lot more freedom. I was posting, my views were going up, and I was getting a lot more interaction on my posts. And then it was kind of funny because I hit where it was like 649 or something like that thousand reactions to posts and things like that, interactions. And then as soon as it did that, it like dropped, it like tanked, it went down by 80%. I don't know, I haven't been getting any warnings lately. I think they stopped those warnings about unoriginal content, which what is that anyway? And but all of a sudden now I am very restricted. My posts get very little interaction. They were getting a lot of interaction, but that just goes to show, like I just said, the deep state has not ended. It is still there. It's still running the show. Trump still tries to fight against it, as do we. But in the end, it's still there. And I don't think we can expect for Obama to be prosecuted. I still don't think anyone's going to spend a single day behind bars. I still don't think we're going to have any accountability at all, other than the validation that what we all thought was true is actually true. And I do love validation, as you know, but come on now. Nobody's going to see any time behind bars. Well, let's just face the facts now while we can. Mike Pence, and I hate it about Mike Pence because I actually liked Mike Pence. I went back at one point and listened to his old radio show when he lived in Indiana. He had a daily show, and you can go back and listen to those old tapes of his radio show, and it was really good. And I thought it was very much in line with how so many of us feel. But then he makes his way, of course, to becoming vice president. And I hate to say it, but I do still think that Mike Pence was part of the old establishment. As much as I liked him, and as much as I thought he was trying to break away from the old establishment, I actually think in the end he was part of it. And it breaks my heart to think so because I really liked Mike Pence. Paul Ryan, I think we all knew that he was the traitor that he was, because as soon as Donald Trump, remember, stepped into office last time, Paul Ryan disappeared. That man was nowhere to be found. And why? Because he knew what he did was wrong. And not only that, but it was treasonous. And Glesna, good morning, Glesna in Michigan. Hope you're doing well. And Peggy, I will go back and definitely look at that link. Benton, Illinois. Is that about, let me see, Benton, Illinois. Is it about the earthquakes? I know I'm trying to think of what the connection is to Benton. And without, I can't open the link while I'm on the show, unfortunately. There's too much money behind the Obama to be prosecuted. Glassnut, yes, Obama will never be prosecuted. Obama still runs the shadow government, the deep state. He's still part of the one world government, which still runs the world and this country. And Donald Trump is doing a great job fighting against the one world government, but it's tough. It's a tough battle. And speaking of tough battles, something else I want to talk about, I don't know how we can't talk about it, is that there is obviously last night we had that earthquake, 8.8, world's largest earthquake that took place in Russia. And of course, if you're like me, the very first thing I thought was, oh, okay, was this perpetuated, by the United States? And people are like, well, that's crazy. That's like the craziest conspiracy theory I've ever heard. But it's really not. There is a such thing, allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly, of tectonic weapons. Now, what do we want? Donald Trump just gave Putin 50 days to end the war, right? 50 days. He said, Putin, I've had enough of this back and forth. We're going to end this situation between you and Ukraine within 50 days. That's my time limit. If you don't end it within 50 days, things are going to get pretty angry and look pretty bad for you. And now I don't like the idea of threatening, of course, Putin, because we know what happens to Putin when he's backed in a corner, and Putin will not lose. We already know that. He absolutely will not lose. And so, what better way to threaten Putin without threatening him than to create some type of disaster? We know that for people who say, "Oh, that's the craziest thing ever," you can look it up, and right now it's a myth. A tectonic weapon is just a myth amongst us. Now, there's somebody out there who probably is like, "Oh yeah, trust me, they have it." But a tectonic weapon has been talked about for a really long time, and and I don't know all the ins and outs of the tectonic weapon, but it's through some type of an energy source, and thermodynamic energy, I believe, is what they call it. And Donna says, I thought it was 10 days. No, Donna, as far as I know, it's 50 days is what I have been reading. If there's anything different than that, we'll correct it tomorrow. But everything I've read is 50 days to end this situation between Ukraine and, of course, Russia. So if it's possible that they use this thermodynamic energy to create earthquakes, it makes sense when you think about it, because just like weather, we can use weather, we can manipulate weather to harm another country's economy. People say, oh, well, that doesn't happen, but it can and does happen. As an example, weather circulates around the world, right? If we create massive storms here, we create some type of hurricane, let's say, what's going to happen wherever it makes land, it's going to really devastate potentially the economy of, let's say, a certain area or a state. Look what happened with some of the hurricanes that have come ashore in Florida. Not only a lot of lives lost, but it took years. Some of those areas still have not been rebuilt down by the Keys. And think about that. You create a big earthquake. Not only does that harm Russia's economy, because I know people will say, well, that's nowhere near Moscow. I understand, but it doesn't have to be about Moscow. It can be about harming the economy of a country. Because let's say you create this massive earthquake, just like you would a storm or any other, scenario. And a massive earthquake could potentially devastate a country's economy. And especially when you think about, then you have the tsunami. I know in Russia, I've been looking at the videos, and it's really difficult to find videos right now in that area. Now, that could be because there was so much devastation that any video cameras within that, hot zone were damaged. And so there's no, I haven't heard yet about casualties. There's a lot of information I haven't heard yet. And maybe where it struck didn't cause as much harm as we think. But the videos that I saw, I'm not going to play them because it was just your typical what you would see in any earthquake, some ceiling panelings falling, some lights, flickering, but I didn't see anything too crazy. But that could be just because the video's not out yet. We don't yet know the assessments of the damage. And Kimberly said Fox reported 10 days this morning. Really? Well, you guys might be right. I'm going to look here because I saved it. I've looked at it, read it, saved it, and I swore I read 50 days. But well, either way, whether it's 10 days or 50 days, we'll come back to it. And I'm going to see here. I know I have it here. Well, okay, here it is. Trump just announced the 50-day headline given to Putin is no longer in play. It says, I'm disappointed in President Putin. I'm going to reduce that 50 days to a lesser number because I think I already know his answers. All right, so we're both right. It started out as a 50-day deadline. Donald Trump said, nope, not going to happen. 50 days is too much. We're going to reduce it to a lesser number. So maybe that lesser number was 10. So it started out at 50 days, lessened it to 10. But either way, and thank you, Donna. I can't open the link, but I do believe you when it comes to 10 days. So we're both kind of right. I don't have any problem being wrong. But either way, is it possible that a tectonic weapon was used against Russia as either a warning saying, hey, we have more control than you think? We don't have to send a nuclear weapon over here. We can cause damage to your country in other ways. We can destroy your economy in other ways. Or was it just a natural disaster? Because if you think about it and everything that's been going on around the world for the past so many months, and I follow earthquakes pretty closely, and I know that area all around the Pacific Rim has been very active. I've seen the videos, as you probably have also, where there was somebody out in Yellowstone. Now, I'm not taking too much into this, but there was somebody out in Yellowstone that had a plastic water bottle on the ground, and the water bottle was kind of thumping around. And we know we've had a lot of strange earthquakes lately in places where we don't normally have earthquakes, like Indiana, Ohio. We're used to them kind of in Missouri. They don't happen often, but we've had some. And there was like a 3 point something that occurred in California at some point yesterday during the day, also before the big earthquake hit in Russia. Now, if you had to ask me if I had to choose, was it a tectonic weapon that we used to kind of give that warning to Putin that, hey, we will destroy you? We don't have to be in a war to destroy your country, which is a theory going around, or was it a natural disaster? It's hard to believe. You think about it, the world's sixth largest earthquake that struck Russia. Now, I think it was part of a natural disaster. I really do. I have to address the theories that are out there because that's my thing. But I do think it's a natural disaster. I think that if you look at the earthquake history recently, I have been very concerned with it because obviously, we here in this area, people are always concerned with Yellowstone. I am concerned with the New Madrid fault line. I really am. And I have paid attention to the New Madrid fault line. Gosh, I don't know, for the past at least 10, 15 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. My son's father was from that area, born and raised down in Charleston, Missouri. Literally, his house was right on top of the old fault line. When I was about 18, 19, when I first not too long after I first met him, we would go down to Charleston, Illinois, or Missouri, I'm sorry, and we would be able to see where the old earthquake was, and you'd see the little where the sand spouts were and where buildings used to stand. And so all this time I've been hearing the stories about it. Back then I was never really worried about it or scared about it, but his mother and her family had, been from that area and lived in that area, their entire lives as well. And they would tell me the stories of what happened back in 1811, 1812, when they had the big earthquakes there, and how the earth liquefied and how entire villages were just swept underground. She would tell me all these stories, and I would be thinking, holy cow, that's crazy. And then as I got earlier, come on, Donna, global warming. Donna, there is no, oh, God's warning. I need to get my eyes checked. I thought you said global warming. I was say, what? People were talking about global warming this morning. Oh, there's earthquakes due to global warming. The sun's too hot. Let's get Billy Gates, and dim the sun a little bit so we have less earthquakes. God's warning. Now, Donna, that's a good possibility. God's warning. There, you are definitely not the only person thinking that that's a sign to us that, hey, as a matter of fact, you know what? Remember Baba? Is it Baba Vanga? I can't remember her name. Baba Vanga. She was somebody who had prophesized a lot of different things that later people allege have come true. But then there's this Baba Vanga number two. As a matter of fact, I was just looking at an article earlier by her. I think I still have it pulled up here. If my internet will cooperate, because it usually does not these days. And there's a Baba Vanga number two, who Donna said exactly what you're talking about, that it is a warning from God. And it's kind of funny that you mentioned that because I was thinking along those same lines. So this new Baba Vanga, they're calling her Baba Vanga number two. She prophesized that on July 5th in 2025, believe it or not, that there would be a tsunami that hit Japan, which is kind of crazy because it's not too far off, is it? So her name is Ryo Tatsuki. And she claimed she had a book. She titled it The Future I Saw. And she had predicted a major disaster like this to hit Japan on July 5th. So while where this isn't July 5th, obviously, it does make a lot of people wonder that yes, a natural disaster did strike Japan just 25 days later. I know a lot of people. Linda said, I thought Israel, God's warning. Also, an interesting comment, Linda, because there's a lot of people who believe, I don't really believe this, but there's a lot of people who believe that the United States is actually what was talked about in the Bible. Elon Musk has talked about it many times, where Egypt was actually, formed down in Memphis, that at one time Memphis was actually the capital of Egypt, that Jerusalem was really over on the west coast, that Israel was actually, somewhere what we call Florida now, that the area like where I live, where some of you live, was Mesopotamia. Potamia. I just cannot talk today. Like here in this basin, really where I'm sitting right now with the Cahokia Mountains, they claim that was really Mesopotamia. So I don't really believe that, but allegedly there's evidence to prove it's true, according to Elon Musk and some other folks. And so people were talking about that early this morning. I saw in some of these chat lines that these tsunamis are set to strike, of course, Southern California. Now, in Southern California, it's just a tsunami watch. I don't think they're expected to receive any, widespread devastation, unlike what we're seeing in some other areas. But people were talking about how this was predicted in the Bible, what's happening in Florida, I mean, in California, because that's the real Israel. It's kind of interesting when you look at what different people believe, and your mind can really go down some rabbit holes, can't it? And you start thinking, what parts of this does and does not make sense, Uh, but again, I don't really, another theory that I'm not really on board with. But either way, we saw a lot of devastation taking place today, whether or not it was a tectonic weapon or a part of God's plan or a natural disaster. Hawaii, I was reading reports where Hawaii is getting hit pretty hard with tsunamis. I'm going to show a video for you because, as you probably know, there's a lot of big celebrities that live in Hawaii. Of course, Mark Zuckerberg being one. Remember, he just expanded his compound. He added another 1,000 acres. Oprah Winfrey. Now, what about Oprah Winfrey? Oprah Winfrey owns a very large part of Hawaii. And she actually owns, since she bought this property, owns a road that is or was part of the escape plan for people who lived in these areas. And she closed the road. That's where her home is. I'm going to show a video in just a second where people in Hawaii were saying, Oprah, open the road. If you look at some of the videos in Hawaii, people trying to escape these tsunami warnings, and in Hawaii, it is fairly serious. Several whales, I think it was 2, 3 whales have washed ashore in Hawaii. Cruise ships had to leave passengers that were on excursions. There were, cruise ships obviously coming in and out of port in Hawaii all the time. People leaving those cruise ships going on excursions. And then, of course, they received a warning from the Coast Guard, these big cruise ships and all other vessels, you have to leave now, leave port immediately, go out to sea. We're expecting this tsunami. If you do not leave, you're going to be washed ashore. They had no choice but to leave people behind as they fled the incoming waves. And people were massively trying to escape. I don't know if you've seen those videos, but you see people in trucks, jeeps, leaving the highway because the highways are packed. Nobody's going anywhere, going off road, driving onto land, driving onto sidewalks, anything they can do to get out of that mess. But God forbid Oprah Winfrey open her road so that people can escape. And I do have a video of that here. I'm going to show you really quick. And to me, I've never been to Hawaii. I would love to go sometime. I don't like the idea of a long flight, which is the reason why I've never been. However, for those folks who have been to Hawaii, you know what a beautiful area it is. And you know how ownership works in Hawaii. Most people understand that concept. Where in Hawaii, the land is still owned, the way I understand it, by the king, by this royal family, and technically, kind of like by the government, if you want to think about it that way. And where you can lease the land, you can build on the land, but you don't own the land. And so I don't understand how somebody like Oprah Winfrey can come in and say, you know what, this is my property and this is my road. Yes, it's an escape route, but you're not using it. So take a look at this video really quick.
Look at this. I think they're trying to open Oprah's road. Come on, Oprah. Save us. Road to all the way up country, bro. All the way up country. She got it all to herself. And everybody trying to get in. Cops trying to open it. Nope. Still closed. Man. She got her own road from Wailea all the way up country, which is the safe zone. And she won't even save us. Now, I don't know that, but road's still closed. People are still passing it. And we're still stuck. Stuck. And a tsunami is coming. I have an hour and a half until it hits. So we're getting there. And I'm still in Kihei. Kaului is.
Okay, so clearly this guy is as frustrated as probably everyone else is in Hawaii. You're trying to escape to higher ground. The highways are packed. You can't get out. You're trying your best to go around. And the one road you need to get to higher ground just happens to go across Oprah Winfrey's property. And that road is closed. Now, what do you think people should do? Do you just disregard law enforcement and make your own pathway and drive onto her property regardless? Well, people in Hawaii are very respectful. They did not do that. They awaited. I don't know if that road ever opened. Last I checked, it had not. People were moving to higher ground. There were some waves that were washing ashore. Now, when I last looked this morning, the waves that were coming ashore weren't too crazy or too devastating. A lot of people did heed the warning and did get out. Now, in Los Angeles, there was a helicopter going around in that area. Oh, Glenn, you used to live, how do you pronounce that? Kehi? I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but I had no idea, Glenn. We'll have to discuss that sometime. That's very interesting. I would love to live in Hawaii. Wouldn't that be beautiful? All right, so this is in Los Angeles area, Los Angeles County. They have a helicopter going around telling people, because no one was leaving. You can see people, they're still in boats. They're hanging out. Waves not expected to get too crazy, of course, in California. This was, of course, last night. And I have not heard the outcome, but here's a helicopter going through Los Angeles County.
Wow. Dude, that pilot is pulling.
Impact at 1 a.m.
Impact at 1 a.m. That's very cool to watch.
Yeah. Come back.
As they watch and nobody leaves, here is some of the footage here. As you can see, this is insane, isn't it? This is I believe that's in Russia. Some of the flooding. People said there were some buildings that floated away, but that's one of the only videos I have been able to find of Russia. Maybe I didn't look hard enough, or maybe, like I said, there's just, as you can see this, there's a whole area there where they said there were some buildings that had washed out to sea. This is, of course, the coastline. And, I watched videos this morning of Japan and some of the effects in Japan where, of course, some areas were heavily flooded, some areas in Hawaii being heavily flooded. I haven't seen anything too crazy. I don't know if that's because where the craziness took place, again, there's no video left or hasn't been accessible yet, or if it just didn't happen. But I read that in Russia, an 8.8 magnitude earthquake would be absolutely devastating to any building that stood. So I'll be curious to see once we're able to get that footage what everything looks like, if there were casualties or if this was in an area. Of course, Russia is so incredibly expanse, and in many areas there's not a lot of buildings, a lot of people that live. So we'll see how that works out. And Glenn says Maui won't get that hard. It has smaller islands nearby that will buffer a tsunami. Yeah, when I saw the videos this morning of Hawaii, I mean, there were people standing out and water was coming up. It was about ankle deep in a lot of areas. I think there was some, like I said, some whales that had washed ashore on the beach. I didn't see any kind of crazy devastation. And unless I think more aftershocks occur, I don't think we're going to see any more damage. I know that there were several aftershocks after that 8.8, like 6.4, 6.3, which are big, in and of itself. And they were concerned about that continuation of those waves coming through. I don't think that there were any areas that left any major devastation. But again, all of those reports have not come out yet. It all happened early morning hours, the tsunami effect. So we'll see how that all plays out. Donna, people are afraid to leave because of looting, as they should be, Donna, because we saw in every disaster, in every single disaster, what do you think happens? There's somebody waiting behind, expecting to survive whatever disaster it was so they can come and loot your home, because they know you can only carry so much with you. And they know that when you flee your home, yes, you're probably going to try to grab your most valuable possessions, but you're probably not going to be able to get everything. You may not even be able to grab anything and you leave. Then there's always this troop of looters that come up behind any natural disaster. And those people, in my opinion, should be shot on the spot. On the spot. I watched a video not too long ago, and I don't know whatever came out of this, but there was a video that took place in Texas after the massive flood along that Guadalupe River. And somebody had found a money bag, I'm guessing from a local business. Somebody probably took this bag thinking, man, I'm going to leave and flee, and I better take the, company money with me. And it looked like thousands of dollars in this money bag that was just laying on the side of the beach. A random person picked it up. You may have seen the video. They were kind of looking through the money, and I'm sure that person probably turned it in. That's of course a different story than looting, but it's the same thing. If a massive devastation occurs, some type of catastrophe, if you find someone's money, someone's cash, someone's valuables, I sure hope people do the right thing and turn them in. But those group of people who come through and loot, they should be shot on the spot. There should be a law where if you see somebody looting your home, your neighbor's home, a home in your community, you should be able to shoot them on the spot and just be done with it. That will probably never happen because they say, oh, well, possessions, you can't shoot people over possessions. But it's not about the possession. It's about the fact that you could potentially destroy someone's life, taking what little they have left of value. Absolutely awful. And Donna, I'm so glad you said that, because it happens after every single catastrophe. So we'll keep an eye on what's going on in Russia. I'll be curious again. I'll be looking all day today to see if I see more videos coming out of Russia to show any type of devastation. And then we got to ask, what's next? A lot of people believe that the earth balances itself. So now we have an 8.8 in Russia. So we're going to look at the other side and see, are we going to have another major earthquake? That plate buckled is what the term is. It buckled. That's what caused that 8.8. Now, some say that it's going to buckle on the opposite side and create another larger earthquake to balance itself, which would put it right about here. So we'll see how that works out. Hopefully that doesn't happen, across that Pacific rim. Some people were saying, no, Los Angeles is due for a big earthquake. We know the New Madrid fault line is due. And where I stand right now, I'm not close to the New Madrid fault line, really. But I still, in anyone in the St. Louis general area, if we have a big earthquake, let's say if an 8.8 hit the New Madrid fault line, the house I'm standing in right now would probably crumble. It would be a very bad situation. You're talking about bridges out, no way back and forth between, of course, Missouri and Illinois. Some people believe there would be a big split along the Mississippi River. And we know Reelfoot Lake, of course, in Tennessee was created due to the New Madrid earthquake back in the 1800s. So, I'm not trying to scare anyone. I don't think anybody feels scared thinking about any such thing, but always something to have an emergency plan for, just in case. Now, the other thing I want to talk about before we go, well, if there's anything to touch base on earthquake wise, we'll talk about it tomorrow. I think it's a done story. We just got to figure out how much damage occurred in Russia. Now, here's something else I really want to talk about today. Shane Tamura, 27 years old. We all saw the video. This guy very casually walking. My system doesn't do well with photos, but we'll see if it pulls it up. There he is. That's Shane Tamura. You've all seen this photo. There he is. He's got his weapon. You see that big silencer on the end of it. Now, are you going to tell me that this guy was targeting the NFL? They're saying he took the wrong elevator because, of all the people that were killed in this situation, outside of course, of a police officer, Wesley LePatner, if I'm saying that right, Wesley LePatner. It's a female. I know her name's Wesley. She's a Blackstone executive. Then there, of course, Etienne, which was a security officer. There was a 27-year-old from Rudin Management employee that was also killed, and just a horrific story. But of course, off-duty New York City off-duty police officer. I'm just terrible with names. Did Aral Aslam was also, of course, killed. We saw police carrying his body out. What a crazy situation this shooting was. But here we have this guy. I was actually watching the television at a doctor's office when this occurred. I could see it play out, and because I never watch TV at home, I was watching this play out, and everybody's like, well, what is this guy doing? He's just very casually walking across this plaza in New York City. He's got his weapon out. He's not running. He's not trying to hide it. He makes his way into 345 Park Avenue, and he goes up the elevator. And so since I'm watching this live, I'm, looking up the address, seeing all the different companies that are there. Of course, Blackstone, of course, Rudin, the NFL offices. There's a lot of different areas there, different businesses within this building. So everybody's kind of speculating, well, where is this guy going? Everybody thinks, oh, he's going to Blackstone, of course, because we all know Blackstone is the enemy of the people. No question about it. And then we find out later, oh, no, he didn't target Blackstone. He was targeting the NFL because he has CTE, which is a brain condition that people receive when they're hit in the head repeatedly. There's a lot of folks that played in the NFL that have CTE. There's a lot of people that played in the NHL that have CTE. And there's no question that CTE causes just devastating damage to the brain. I had someone close to me back in the day, a few years ago, that was on the World Hockey Board and was on the CTE committee. And I learned a lot about CTE during that time. It's a very devastating illness caused by an injury to the head. In football, obviously you're getting slammed on the ground. You're getting a lot of concussions, repeated concussions. In hockey, very similar, situation. Now, they've cut down a lot of the fighting in hockey because of CTE, and they've done, put a lot of more safety guards in place to keep the players from getting CTE. But it's a devastating brain injury caused by repeated concussions, being hit in the head. Now this guy, Shane, never played for the NFL. He never played for the NFL. He did play football. Allegedly, he did blame the NFL for his CTE injuries. He left a note behind. I don't know if any of you saw the note, but he did leave a note behind that said, research CTE. It gave his password to some account he had. It said research PTE or CTE. It said something about CTE destroying his brain and all this other stuff. So allegedly, he was going up to the NFL office. He took the wrong elevator, and guess where he ended up? He ended up in the Blackstone offices, and the one person that he shot, of course, was Wesley LePatner, a Blackstone executive, was killed. Another 27-year-old, again from Rudin Management, a name has not, that I've seen, been released yet, along with a security guard and a police officer. And maybe he did take the wrong elevator up. Maybe it's a cover up. I don't know. There's a lot of people who I think or yes, oh, Donna, you're absolutely right. Happens to prize fighters too. Yeah, anyone who is repeatedly hit in the head can have this brain injury, gets repeated concussions from CTE. And it causes, for any of you who know someone who had CTE or at least know the stories of CTE, it really causes a lot of imbalance. It causes people to behave in a manner that is not themselves. They can become violent. They can become despondent. They can have a lot of depression, some very bad side effects. There's been a couple of instances in the past where we've had suicides within sports organizations due to CTE. We've had, there was a couple of different people, I believe one, Donna, to what you said, a prize fighter, somebody had murdered their family due to CTE. There's a lot of different things, results that can happen. So, did Shane have Tamura have CTE? Came from Las Vegas, 27 years old, all the way to the NFL office, but didn't make his way to the NFL office. I never understand, and maybe we can't make sense of these types of shootings because you can't make sense out of something when you're dealing with mental illness or a brain injury. What these people are going to do maybe just doesn't make sense. But you would think that if he's going to travel, he's got this weapon, he's going to travel from Las Vegas all the way down to New York City to take out the NFL office, some folks in the NFL, and then he would think it through. He would know, okay, when I go, I need to probably put my gun in a bag or something where people don't know I have it, because if I don't, if I'm just casually walking through a plaza here, I'm probably going to get shot first, right? Before I even make it to my way to my target. But again, CET, maybe he's not thinking rationally. So he's walking, strolling very cautiously, slowly through this plaza with his weapon out, not worried at all that anyone's going to take him out. And no one did. Makes his way into the building. Now, would he have researched and realized there's two elevators? One elevator takes you up to where the NFL office is, the other elevator takes you up to where the Blackstone office is. Or I can't remember which floor he ended up on. I know he shot himself on the 33rd 31st floor, and I believe the 44th, am I right, the 44th floor? I wrote all this down. Of course, I should probably have some notes to remind myself, but he went up to this floor, obviously just complete devastation. Didn't affect the NFL at all, didn't go to the right floor, didn't go to the right office, ended up going back to that. I think it was, I'm not even going to guess on the floor now, but he went up to the floor. I'm kind of wondering if I've CTE myself today. He wandered up to the floor, ended up taking himself out. Now, earliest reports, the absolute earliest reports, people on these back channels were joking. Well, yes, he took himself out, but he had help from the NYPD. Now, of course, we don't know what that means, if it's true, but a lot of people are asking, well, if you look, I'm going to try to show it again. If you look at his weapon here, how did he manage to shoot himself with this weapon? Now, there probably are ways to do that. I don't think it's completely out of the realm that he could take that weapon and turn it against himself. But there are a lot of people out there saying that he was actually killed by the NYPD, and we're just not going to report it that way. What's true, what's not true, I do not know, but that's the story that I hear. So when you hear people questioning it, how did he shoot himself with that weapon? Well, maybe he didn't. I don't know. The guy deserved what's coming to him either way, either way. But it does bring you to start thinking about, was this really about CTE? Was it really about the NFL, or was it really about Blackstone and taking out an executive at Blackstone? You're going to hear a lot more talk about that probably in the future, not just today, because it's really starting to make its rounds. Either way, that's about all that I have to talk about today. I wanted to talk about those two big topics, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some other things tomorrow. Got lots of things on the agenda. Colonel Joe Adams going to join us next week on Wednesday, and as you guys know, I've been having some health issues. I'm trying to get it together, but it's been a really bad week for me. So if I seem a little off, not remembering things, not keeping things straight, that's exactly why. And hoping that for whatever reason, whatever health issue is taking place with me, I just had some testing done the other day, not yesterday, the day before. Next week, I'm having some testing done. I'm still waiting to get my heart PET scan done. My heart is enlarged. It's twice the size of what it should be. So that's a little worrisome. I'm, getting that looked at. I just found that out the day before yesterday. And whatever is going on with me, I'm having a really hard time talking. So if I talk a lot, I get really dizzy and have a hard time focusing. So if I seem a little out of it, that's why. But you know what? Next week, I'm seeing my lung doctor, hoping to get these issues resolved. I don't think I have anything too crazy, but either way, I'll get it resolved, and hopefully we'll be a little bit back on track. I had contemplated not having a show, for a couple weeks until I kind of get it together and figure out what's going on. And am I going to be able to, talk for an hour, or am I not going to be able to? Maybe I'll just fill in with guests where I'm not talking quite as much. We'll see how it all works out. But in the meantime, I will get it figured out next week. If I seem a little bit out of it, I just want to make sure I explain why. If I can't keep my thoughts together, can't say certain words, it will be okay. I'm convinced of that. But either way, I will see you guys tomorrow. I hope you all have a really fantastic day, and I will look forward to talking to you then. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap.